Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the new Getting to Know Japan webinar. So I'm Jeffrey Mazziata, the activities coordinator here at YCAPS. I'm stepping in today for our usual host and, of course, the program director of this series, Amani Kidd, who's behind the scenes today helping out. Thanks, Amani, for your help with the opening video. So we look forward to having you back as the moderator soon, and I can go back to watching my evening pro wrestling shows during this time. But rather than my boring hobbies, today we're excited to be joined by Dr. Naohiko Umewaka, who will be presenting on an introduction to Japanese performative arts, history and ideas behind no drama. And I have a little bit to say about that. So during the opening of Japan in 1868, when Commander Matthew Perry arrived, Dr. Umewaka's great-grandfather Minoru Umewaka was performing No in the Shogun's garden. And I have a small quote. Minoru was acting in the Shogun's garden when the news of Perry's arrival stopped the play. Without him, the art would have perished. He restored it through poverty and struggle, living in a poor house, in a poor street, in a kitchen, selling his clothes to buy masks and costumes from the sales of bankrupt companies, and using kaichu for rice. So obviously, this is some very humble beginnings from what it sounds like. But we're not going to get too much into the history today, but we will get a bit into it. But first, let me introduce our speaker. So Naohiko Umewaka is a No actor and director with an active international presence. He made his stage debut at the age of 3 in the Shimai Shoujo, trained by his father, Naoyoshi Umewaka. Excuse me. And his uncle, Manzaburo Umewaka. And I apologize for my pronunciation in all of these. I'm sure it's not great. But both were central figures in the world of No. He received his PhD from Royal Holloway, University of London, and his academic research continues to inform his approach to performance, exploring the philosophical and theatrical dimensions of No in both traditional and contemporary contexts. His published works include Invitation to No and Ryugyu Kozo. So, in today's talk, Dr. Umewaka will discuss the basics around No theater, especially focused around the physical aspects of No performance. And for our listeners with a military background, you may find a connection to the importance of movement and body control, both in No and your own past training. Uh, Also, one final thing that's quite interesting is Minoru Umewaka was the first No grandmaster to teach an American scholar, Ernest Fenollosa. You can correct that if you'd like, sir. And he was a Harvard man associated with the Boston Museum. So there's a lot of overlaps here, what with Perry and the modern military audience that we have for our programs. But one final thing, just a kind reminder to everyone, please refrain from turning on your microphones during the duration of today's recording and presentation. That way we can avoid any type of hot mic situations and we can hear our speaker clearly. That being said, I'm going to turn things over to our speaker today. Sir, the floor is yours.
Hello, how do you do? And thank you very much for having me. And I'm greatly honored. And Amani-san, and thank you so much for this arrangement. Today, rather than talking about the history, brief history of No theater, which I probably touch very briefly, but I like to talk about something that we can share, we can all share, something very deep secret when you are involved in some physical art form, which is the basics. What does it mean by basics? Each physical art form has its own unique, you may think, the basics. In sports, martial arts, dance theater, and No is not an exception. What I like to do today is that I'm going to play this video excerpt, which was taken in 2024 in December at Zen Temple in Hamamatsu, which is in Shizuoka Prefecture. And the director of this photography was my son, Naoto Umewaka, who went to Temple University, actually, Temple University in Japan. And the main character, the dancer, is me. I'm going to play this, but the mute the sound. But while the video is going on, what being shown, I will narrate and I will read out what I have written. And the content of my reading, my script, is not necessarily related to what you are witnessing on your screen. It is not related. But please take it as just an image. And what I'm speaking, the content of my talk is, as I just mentioned, is about the basics. And at the end of this talk, I would very much like to share my view with you, the listeners. I'd like to share a few thoughts on what we mean when we talk about the basics in the physical art forms, whether that's sports, martial arts, dance theaters. Whenever this discipline, if it involves the body, the essence of the basics lies somewhere between the physical and the mental. It's about how to be there. That might mean how to stand up, how to remain still and relaxed, but internally activated while even in a seated position. In nearly every tradition, beginners are told to relax. They relax the shoulders, maybe the arms, the knees, and so on. And they are told not to use just the arms when moving the arms. The motion should come from somewhere deeper, often centered around the scapula, which becomes the pivot points. We all know this. Interestingly, this holds true whether you are studying dance or kendo, Japanese swordsmanship, or in other physical art form, karate and the combat sports too. Breathing technique too is considered fundamental, but many teachers don't teach it right away because breathing is invisible, internal. And once a bad habit sets in, it's hard to undo. Developing the diaphragm for proper breathing takes a few years of physical work. The posture, breathing, relaxation emphasized across all these physical arts because they have been tested by time. Through experience, past masters discover how to use the body most efficiently with no wasted motion. But here, the issue. These principles tend to collapse in moments of pressure on stage or in competition. It's as if our own bodies turn against us. I think of this as a kind of built-in bug, like a program bug in a computer system. You can train for years, and yet at the critical moment, your shoulders tighten, your knees start to tremble. In Japanese, we say, your knees, the knees are laughing. This bug is something I find fascinating, not just in performance, but in life. So I wanted to observe it in a setting completely removed from theater. That's why I looked at free diving in the ocean. Free diving is a sport where people dive over 100 meters underwater easy without oxygen tanks and return alive. The laws are different there. While gravity stays more or less the same, water resistance, pressure, and enormous physical strain all come into play. And just as a side note, gravity doesn't change much even at 11,000 meters underwater, like a Mariana Trench. It's only 0.28% stronger gravity than at sea level. So gravity more or less stay the same, but the water resistant pressure, you know that it's enormous. What interests me in freediving isn't just a physical accomplishment. It's how divers behave when they are in the most extreme moment, the last 50 meters back to the surface, when their lungs are screaming for air. And yet, the one thing they don't do is panic. They are trained for this moment. Panic is the natural response to oxygen deprivation. It's a natural response, but it's exactly what they must not to do. That's the basic. So again, the basic often go against instinct. They are not natural, but they are essential. That led me back to my own field, no theater, no drama. The basics and flashy techniques. They are not even visible, really. They involve creating stillness full of hidden motions and isometric tension that's always ready to move, but doesn't. Paradoxically, the basics are taught first, but even the grandmasters never quite master them. Just like in other fields. In kendo swordsmanship, for example, you will find eighth dan the grandmaster on YouTube. You can find it easily, still working on how to hold the shinai, bamboo sword, how to step forward, how to go backward. It almost sounds like a joke. Remind you, he is the grandmaster of eighth dan. That gentleman has been pursuing the perfection for nearly probably 60 or 70 years. But he is still obsessed to talk about the basics, which he can perfect. And I wonder why this happens. And in Okinawa, those of you who might have experienced Okinawa, the life, and in Okinawa karate, particularly the Uechi-ryu school, there is a kata called Sanchin, literally means three fighting or three combat. A very simple form that's practiced over and over for many, many decades. Everything they need is contained in that one kata form. From the outside, it looks repetitive, almost boring, but inside, it's endless work. Now, I want to go back to even further to the roots of Japanese mask performance. One of the earliest forms that might be a prototype of no theater, though scholars still debate on this, is called gigaku. It was introduced to Japan in 1612 AD by a performer named Mimashi. Mimashi, Mimashi. We know the name of this performer, a man from Kudara, that ancient Korean kingdom, who came by sea from China route. At that time, Japan was importing all kinds of things, including intangible art form from China, including religion, bureaucracy system, philosophy, military system, and etc. The ruler then was Empress Sumiko, the woman, female empress. The form known as kuregaku or gigaku, just as I mentioned, they're the same thing, came from southern Chinese kingdom of Wu. Its root, according to some theories, go even further through Tibet, India, Persia, even Greece. That man, the performer, Mimashi, settled in Japan and taught gigaku to local boys in Nara, place called Sakurai. According to the Nihon Shoki, the performance used flute, drums, and Buddhist chant while wearing foot-head masks. He brought some of these masks with him from China, and remarkably, they still exist. You can see these thousand years wooden-made masks then at the Shosoi in Nara, or the Tokyo National Museum, or in other national museum in Japan. In the 1980s, I remember, I visited the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, where Fenellosa worked a lot. I was shown gigaku mask stored alongside no mask and costume. What struck me then, and still does, is that although the object survived, the bodywork didn't. The physical essence, the performative movement of gigaku is gone. We no longer know how it was performed. We lost its basics. The sea route Mimashi took to Japan must have been life-threatening. Let's fast now forward to 1363, the year Zeami was born. He is considered as a founder of what we call today's no drama. Zeami wasn't just an actor. He wrote around 20 to 30 plays and over 16 theoretical texts, treatises. These writings weren't meant for the public, was not meant to be published. They were secret, passed down from master to successor, 1-to-1 corresponding, passed down. Ironically, you can now find them translated online, probably Kindle in many languages. But remind you, that was the top secret book for the performer. And what do these writings focus on? Not display, oddly enough. And what do these writings focus on? Not his plays, oddly enough. Not stage tricks, but the basics. For example, when playing an old man in no theater, Zeami says, the old man who might be a ghost or a god. Zeami writes, do not bend your back or knees trying to look like an old man. That's out of date. Instead, he says, stand upright, look far into the distance, and keep your mind calm. And here, relax. And even skilled actors often fail at this, Zeami says. He gives subtle instruction. For instance, the stomping. You know, when the actor lifts their foot and stomp, land on the wooden floor, and make sound, almost like a creator produce the sound almost like a percussion. So the stomping should be just slightly, he says, to act an old man here still. He gives subtle instruction for the old man's dancing. The stomping for the old man should be just slightly delayed to suggest the slower pace of an old man, but not exaggerated. The audience should feel the delay, but not to be able to trace why. He emphasizes intention and restraint. He also says, when the upper body moves, the lower body should stay quiet. When the feet stomps, the upper body should remain soft. And this, he asks, is the proper balance. He says at the end, the mind should be at 100% activated. The body, you should use 70%. The missing 30% makes the performance more moving. Okay. Any questions or?
Okay, yeah. We could definitely go into the question and answer time now. Great. So again, I want to mention to the chat, if you have any questions for our speaker today, please drop them in the chat and we will be happy to present them. In the meantime, while we're waiting for audience questions, I'd like to ask a couple of my own, and I think Amani had some as well. One thing for me, in the beginning, you were talking quite a bit about the dedication that some no practitioners have to their art, and even like masters with decades of experience being strongly focused on mastering the basics still. For example, how much depth you were talking about in how to move their foot just right and just properly, so that it gets the right impression on the audience. So it made me wonder what type of person is usually attracted to this vocation and becoming a no performer, because it seems like it's very difficult, and you have to have a lot of thought process behind it. So what type of person is usually attracted, and then also, what traits do you think are important in someone who wants to learn or perform no?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you. Um, it's up to, I would say, late 20th century. No, late 19th century, maybe in the middle of Meiji period. I think that it's more or like a family inheritance, the names and what generation and stuff. And those come from outside. They were considered as the disciples, but the professional, not the amateurs. And it was a little bit unfair back in those days because they had no chance to start when they are like 5, 6 years old. It is always good to start any physical art form as early as possible, right? But of course, in the later of your life, if you are lazy, all of a sudden you get lazy at the teen age around 22, you get lazy. That's no, though, that's very even worse. But provided that individual pursue the whole life, the earlier the better. So in no theater, those people who are coming from outside had the less chance. That's one thing. And uh, what was the other question? Sorry. Sorry, I think you're muted.
The other question was, what traits do you think are important in making someone become successful in no? Are there particular traits like maybe if they've got attention to detail or strong calf muscles? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I can answer that question because it's a very deep question that
I see.
I don't know. But anyway, but if I can quote from my great grandfather, he was from this Ernest Fenerosa, the book. Uh, he was concerned about. He was very he was focused on a spirit and mind. He didn't hardly talk about technique. And he praised Ernest Fenellosa too. You're doing very well. You're doing very well. The voice is good, movement is good, I think. But the mind and spirit, I don't know, it's kokoro, the spirit, tamashi. Tamashi is almost like a spirit, I think, which we don't talk about that nowadays.
That's
Nobody talk about, no actor, my disciple, should try to enhance your spirit. We don't talk about that. But back in those days, he was very much obsessed with, and I kind of know why.
That's interesting. It reminds me, again, I have a very niche interest. I'm quite interested in Japanese professional wrestling. And in Japanese professional wrestling, they have the Tokon spirit, and there's a big feeling of the importance of having that fire in you that is almost more important than anything else. And that in their mind for wrestling, it's like this unwillingness to give up, right? And you're never going to give up no matter how hard the challenge is. And it's quite an interesting thing to think of if you know about professional wrestling, and it's a story, it's entertainment, but that fighting spirit is something that they still feel is very strong part of it, and it can mean success or lack of success if you don't have it, even if you have
Yeah,
everything else. If you don't have that fighting spirit,
yeah,
you won't be
exactly, which is
successful.
very important. And if I may add that, but also at the same time, it is true that like Italian philosopher, say Machiavelli, said it is foolish to win the war with your spirit and thing. So I don't have to explain this. You are, you are a professional of this. So both are important, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I have to, I have to say you mentioned uh Ernest Fenolosa and how your grandfather or great grandfather taught him. So I was curious, these days, are there any foreigners that are non-Japanese practitioners of No? Or is it very, very rare to see that?
Back in 1800, 1870, 1890, none.
Hmm.
I don't think there's any historically recorded.
Yeah, and even these days as well, right?
Even there's that we have even I think we have even professional one female performer in Congo school. She's very much active, I think. I think she is from, if I'm not mistaken, from Poland. Well, I don't know, but she is professional, doing very, very well and active
Interesting.
abroad, I think. Yes.
Yeah, that's
But
very good.
yeah.
I wonder, you did mention a lot of people start quite young, so I wonder if because of that, that tends to help skew towards mostly Japanese because it's hard to imagine a young girl in Poland at 6 years old deciding to take up no.
No, that's almost with impossibility we're talking about, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
But I wonder why, because any physical art form, I don't know, like especially in the combat sport, boxing or whatever we talked about, MMA or something, the
Mm,
earlier the better, isn't it?
yes.
Yeah. But it is extremely risky to teach 7 years old MMA in a full strength. I mean, it's madness.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know what kind of methodology you have developed in the MMA teachings and even boxing too.
Yeah, I know for a lot of those physical sports with children, they often focus on a lot of the very basics. I think a lot of things, as you were talking with No, I think the basics are key. So, particularly in that, it's a bit off topic, but a lot of like rolling and how to stay safe when you're rolling and moving.
Of
And
course,
with
yeah.
that, you get a little bit of body control, which then I guess gives you a bit of advantage as you get a little bit older and more able to do more advanced techniques, I guess,
Yeah,
is
and of
possible.
course, I'm a great fan of a soccer, the football, of course, but I don't do it. But for they're now pretty discouraging the children to play soccer because of the heading, but the concussion and for long-term damages and stuff. So it's a different subject, but still, I mean, but still, start at a young age is better, isn't it?
Mm, yeah, I agree. So we had a question from Amani. She was asking, she said, perhaps this is a question for people who are unfamiliar with the fundamentals of No, but in the video you showed, the costume you were wearing was very elaborate. She said, right down to the bright red hair. And she was curious, what is the significance of what you were wearing? Were you portraying a character or a god? So I guess maybe if you could talk about maybe the costuming and is there a particular meaning behind different ones and if there's anything that maybe beginning viewers of No might want to look
Yeah.
for, pay attention
Yeah,
to.
yes. The narrative, the story of this play, the theme is about the monster. That red creature is a monster. It's an imaginary monster. And I think that in reality, I think they saw orangutan and they thought it was a monster in China, in ancient China. And he lives deep in the underwater of Yangtze River, which is 6,000 kilometers long. And that's his favorite. And he loves sake. That's why he's so red. He turned into red. He doesn't have an enzyme to break down the alcohol. So just like Japanese, a lot of more than 50%, I don't know. So that's it. And he can walk on the water surface, no problem. And this play are said to bring you luck and blessing. So it's a happy play. So when he's dancing like a kicking over, it's not a martial art. He's just kicking the waves. He's dancing on the water surface of the Yangtze River. That's what it is.
I see.
And that's still, you may ask, you're talking about the basics, the very simple and so on. And yes, it is. It's a very simple. The costume, like Amani-san said, it's elaborate. It's not minimalism, but more maximalism.
Mm,
You see, it's a opulent to some extent, but the technique is very simple.
I see.
Yeah,
So I just thought about something. So you mentioned in this particular case, this character that's being played, is an orangutan. If so, my friends might be some orangutans, the way they love Japanese sake as well. But and he was playing in the water. However, obviously the stage itself doesn't have any. Like when we think of like a Western play, if the character is acting and it's in a water, they're going to have some things on the stage to make it clear, like, oh, there's a river, there's some trees, there are these like various decorations to help sell or show the atmosphere that the character is in. But I noticed in this play there was not that. Is the stage, does it stay the same for all productions then?
exactly. And that's you put your finger on it. That's a crucial the discussion argument. If I can give you an example by citing Jean-Paul Sartre, for instance, the French philosopher, contemporary French philosopher, who passed away a long time ago, who actually he refused to receive the Nobel Prize of Literature. He was a strange man. He didn't like the Nobel Prize of Literature. That's, can you imagine? A lot of money too. But but anyway, he said imagination and perception, they don't coexist. So if you are imagining the thing and you can perceive thing at the same time, for instance, he may be not correct. We are not talking about the science. We are not talking about brain science. We are talking about the philosophy, which is probably more aligned with no theater, Japanese theater, in the world of theater. Well, he says when you are imagining about, thinking about your own mother, for instance, you are imagining. But the moment your mother stand in front of you, you can't imagine about her anymore because
Uh,
you're perceiving. So those things, they don't match, they don't coexist, right?
mm, mm,
So for other ways, like we don't like a girlfriend, for instance, you all of a sudden you wanted to date with this girl, but you don't know where she lives. So you were on the phone, talk to her on the phone for I don't know 10 times. So you start to imagine where she lives and what's the home, where's her kitchen, and you start
uh,
to develop all these images. But the moment you visit her apartment at the house, all this imagery is dispersed into air. So, so it's your choice. How much we are talking about the proportion, how much you want to show your audience, let them perceive things or let them imagine things. That's your choice.
mm.
Uh,
It's very interesting. It reminds me when you were talking about it, it made me think of like the platonic ideal of something, right? Like in your mind, you have this image of what a chair is, but then, it's the most chair that a chair could be. And like by
exactly.
not having an image of a chair on the stage, the audience is free to imagine that chair however they might, which adds
Exactly.
another depth to it. That's actually very fascinating. I can see the real value behind that. Although I can also see how for beginners, it could possibly be a difficult art to understand fully. Which brings me to a question from our audience that we had from Vivian. Vivian Ng. She says that her image is that the impression is that no is very difficult to understand for the general audience. And she remembers that she was at an event and someone was introducing no to visitors, and that person mentioned that some no plays are actually meant for no performers. almost as if it's like an expensive lesson and not for the public, so to speak. And so she was asking, what are some of the beginner friendly no plays that you might recommend? So if someone wanted to experience no for the first time.
I don't know. Um, but personally, I think it's not the choice of the play.
Mm,
You can pick the most difficult, deepest, whatever, the most complicated one. It's no problem. It depends upon the performer.
I see.
Yeah, how much information does he carry around? How much execution can he? It's similar like a martial art.
Mm,
It's not the difference with the school. I mean, how much that person have a training. Doesn't matter which school, and in the combat sports too. I think that's how I perceive things. So any play is okay, no problem. It's please try to choose most difficult, like old woman's play, for instance. I'm just half joking. This play is almost 2 hours long, but actually shorter than Wagner, actually. It's Wagner. It's shorter than German Wagner, but still, it's a pretty long play for 2 hours. And the first 1 hour of this play, the old man kneels without moving. And but well, choose that play, see how it goes. But you have to pick the right performer.
I see. That's
You
fascinating.
know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just amazed at the concept of having to sit for that performer to be seated for an hour like that. It reminds me of old command change ceremonies and having to stand at attention for 30 minutes straight. And that was just terrible to have to deal
Yeah,
with.
that's the terrible. That's terrible. Must have been really, yeah.
The secret was not locking your knees because if you lock your knees, you may pass out. That was our secret at that time. And I'm sure no performers have many secrets to their art on ways that they can do their performance and make it through. Um, but beyond the physical thing, we had a question by Mr. Or Ishar Newman, excuse me on pronunciation of the name, and they asked, "Can you explain about the language of no plays?" And they say that they see the Japanese audience also sometimes needs interpretation. And he mentioned something about the unique tonation, which I'm not familiar with personally, but perhaps you could talk a bit about that.
Um, no singing,
Mm,
but it's written. It's usually hard to understand for the audience and even to the performer themselves too. You know, basically we are not scholars where it comes from and grammars and so on. And what was the first time this phrase was used? Was it in the back in 700 AD or when? We don't know that so much, but it's difficult for some maybe two or three reasons. One is that grammar itself it's written in medieval language and written language especially. It's not spoken. Like hey you, how do you do it? No, it's more written and formal. First, secondly, the way we compose music on literature, the line and sentence at one point, at one instance, for one occasion, it can be straightforward. Like, for instance, I'm just saying it, okay? My name is Umewaka. I'm just saying it's in English. My name is Umewaka. My name is Ume. That's fine. But what if you cut in the middle? My name is Umewaka. So if you cut into pieces and put it together, rearrange it, but it is sometimes necessary. We don't know why. Because when you have ideal, like a 7/8 rhythm, haiku rhythm, for instance, 古池や河津飛び込む水の音. If it's so much ideals, you get bored. So you want to dearrange that on purpose. On what basis? Depend upon the creator.
I see.
And I think they do that in opera too. They do it in opera too.
In
I think Western.
performance, would this kind of almost rearranging or pausing and kind of playing with the language in a way that makes it different and unique. Is that something that would be written into that, like for okay, so this line is always broken up in this different, like in this way, or is it more of like a jazz type of thing where the performer can kind of play with it in their own unique way and break it up how they like? Or is it more like, no, this line is broken up in this particular way to have a certain effect?
Oh dear, I wish I could improvise.
Okay, so not so much
I
improv.
wish I could improvise. I am caught in this rigid prison for last 65 years, dear.
Interesting.
And if you make mistake, that's a problem.
Uh,
Sometimes you get suspended if it's an important play, like Old Woman's Play, for instance. There's no mistake, and during Edo period, it's not a peaceful thing, but some no actor had to commit harakiri. I
hmm.
can give you examples from the history book, no problem.
Wow.
So,
Well,
so it's quite violent in that sense. And
I can appreciate their
you
dedication to their
yeah,
craft,
you
but I'm
don't want to
happy
do
that actors today,
yeah, you don't want to do harakiri by making mistakes. Nobody.
I would not be here to be on this webinar today because I have made numerous mistakes over the course of my life. I
Yeah.
don't think I would have reached the age of 6 if that was the case. My childhood was full of mistakes. Um, we'll continue on. We had another question or comment about the vocalizations and stuff. So I guess it kind of goes well in with. Now, I'm not an expert on this, so please bear with me if I make mistakes in presenting this question. This is from Tim Hoffman, and he says a Choboguchi vocalization in No and most other narrative performative arts seems to be suppressing rather than projecting their oral expression. And he says in favor of a particular stylistic impression. And then he asks, is this a conscious preference for the mu side of the yu mu considerations common to Zen and Chinese Taoist philosophy? And if I butchered that question, Tim, I apologize.
No, 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 no. I think it's an important point. And no fear is sometimes accused of being unclear, the vocalization, and it is true. But I try to be as clear as possible. And Zeami, 650 years ago, he said, use your lips, control your lips, so that your vocalization, the words will be more clear. So he was very conscious about clarity.
Hmm.
But I think he's talking about a different level. I mean, it's a very good question. Like, if I may bring one opera singer, um, like Sutherland. I think she was in English. I think Sutherland. She was the most beautiful voice, but she wasn't so clear. You sometimes don't know what she was singing. You see. But that's always it's a kind of a dilemma. Do you choose the clarity or but at the end, I think those things has to exist together. Otherwise, it's not perfect. But then again, I don't know there's such thing as a perfect in the field of art. But anyway, uh, okay. Take a look at Tibetan Dalai Lamas, for instance, their prayer. You see. Is it clear? Is it about the resonance?
Hmm.
It's about the transformation, transmitting something, but through something, probably not even the emotions. I think if you take no theater singing as probably the origin somewhere coming from there, at least Gigaku mask seems to me to come from Tibet, Greek, and Persian, and all this. We can't deny that. So that I can't answer that question. But I personally, I try to be as clear as possible. I don't know if I'm answering the right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned Zaimi. If I said it correctly, I probably am not saying that correctly. And we had a question from Lauren who asked, do professionals read Zaimi's notes now, or do professionals just learn while copying their sensei?
Well, sorry, what I don't understand what Zai, what
I believe you mentioned one of the scholars, the
oh,
famous
Zeami?
Zeami, excuse me,
Zeami,
that's my
Zeami, Zeami.
pronunciation error. Do people, professionals these days, read those notes to learn from, or do they essentially just copy their senseis?
I think 90% or 95% Zeami's philosophy, they don't come in the training processes for the teenager or disciples. My father never talked about Zeami. And remind you, Zeami is from Kansas school. We have five schools. And of course, but Zeami is also very much linked with Kompar school. But other schools, the Fosho, Kongo, and Kita, they don't care. I mean, they may learn, but it's not directive. The Zeami is not their ancestors. So probably it is, I think it's okay to generalize what no theater is, to assert what no theater is, assuming that no, what Ziami is saying is that the fundamental core philosophy which constitutes the no theater. Some scholars or some performer may argue. Yeah.
I see. So,
So I said my father never mentioned about Zeami in his life.
and you mentioned there's currently five kind of
At
schools.
schools,
So,
school.
just for basic knowledge, what are the five schools? Current,
You want to name you
if it's okay, I imagine a lot of folks that might be watching, like later on our YouTube, they might not have these, so it might be useful.
among five schools, four schools directly from Zeami's time,
I see.
and one is from Edo period, which is Kita school.
Okay.
And my family was originated, said to be in the 15th century, 1517, but we are not Kansas school. We joined Kansas school from Toyotomi Hideyoshi time in the 16th century. Uh, so we are now part of Kansas school.
Interesting. And so all no must fall under one of these five schools.
Yes, you have to belong to either. Otherwise, you are not recognized as a professional.
I see.
Yeah, we call it Iemoto system. It's a political system.
Hmm. For a young no performer who wants to join, I imagine they must essentially choose one school and try to go to that school. If they cannot get into one of the schools, is it possible to then try with another no school, or is it pretty much, would that be a bit of a faux pas?
I think young either doesn't matter. Your sex doesn't matter. I think you will be most welcome. I think because of decreasing population of the no performer
I
professional
see.
I'm talking about. So you will be mostly welcome.
I see. I
So
see.
if
That's
you
good to know. That's good to
so
know.
those viewers who are interested, please join us.
Yes, we actually had a question in the chat. I was going to get to a little bit later from Tofik Kojok, who asked, "Do young people in Japan have an interest in No today? Is the future of No secured with the younger generation?" And it sounds like I think with most things in Japan, we are concerned about the future.
Yeah, that's also a very good question. But don't forget, no theater survived for 650 years. You may wonder why. What on earth? 650 years living theater, family is still doing the same thing, without not adapting to the environmental culture, environment. But I think that they were very good at adapting to the political environment, I think. They're very good, probably. That was how they survived, I think. They were not after only powers, I think, but they were very closely linked to very powerful temples such as Todaiji, Horyuji, and all these. They had army in back on those days, the temples. So they had a very strong endorsement, no performer, and also they had extremely strong backup from shogunate, and so
There's definitely a cultural heritage behind No that I think is important for Japanese identity. I think people would probably argue. I imagine when you have a history of 600 plus years, I think there's a vested interest in making sure that stays alive, even if it's not something people go to every day.
Yeah, exactly,
But
exactly.
yeah, I think there is a value that
Yeah,
would be
uh,
important. It would be lost,
exactly.
you know. Mm.
I asked I was in Bologna University, and I asked this question: have you, the student, maybe 20 student participants, or no? I gave a lecture them. I said, and have you seen anybody saw Puccini opera? Nobody.
Yeah, exactly.
So why? They're all Italian. See, so we have
Hey, we're
probably,
busy on TikTok these
yeah, we
days,
share
okay?
the same problem. We probably have the same problem. Maybe it's not a problem. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I
Tell me
agree.
what.
It's part of exactly, it's worldwide. That actually brings you mentioned about the history of No and how long it's been around, and through, and it's survived through so many different eras. So Jimmy had a question I think is a nice lead after that. And Jimmy Adams asked, so he said, this question may be as difficult as mastering the basics, but would you share your idea of what no means to Japanese performing arts? How do you feel that it fits into the big picture of Japanese performing arts?
Um, sorry, you mean the Japanese public, how they perceive
Uh,
no theater? Oh,
it doesn't necessarily have to be the Japanese public's perception. It could be your own thoughts. It could be what you feel that no means to the whole of Japanese performing arts and how it fits into the big picture of Japanese performing arts as a whole.
I think Japanese that no theater is. I'm not saying because I belong to the no thing. It's the fundamental core of the Japanese performing arts. Japanese kabuki is much later. And some of the technique of kabuki that they use, like including sliding feet, and some of the plays that they perform, the repertoire comes from no theater. And who contributed to this? My great grandfather. And who also contributed to this? Ichikawa Danjuro, probably 9th century during the Edo period, who had a very interesting friend or master disciple relationship, my great grandfather. So I think he learned from my great grandfather. I'm talking about the kabuki actor, the 9th generation Ichikawa Danjuro. So he's the one who embodied, he transplanted the play called Ataka into the kabuki setting. And he changed the title, Kanjincho, instead of Ataka. In no, we call it Ataka, but when it comes to kabuki, they changed the name to Kanjicho. It's the same theme. See, so it's the core, the technique of Japanese performing arts, no theater. We can't deny this.
Very interesting. Thank you for this. So we are a little bit low on time. So I think a nice thing I kind of like to finish up with a couple, maybe a good chance for advertising for No, for people watching. We had two questions from the audience. That I think would be very helpful for all of us that just enjoyed this great talk. And we're now inspired to go see some No performances. We had Meg Nakano. She mentioned that, and I'll read two questions. So Meg Nakano said she has seen No by Firelight, Takigi No, as well as in a theater. And so she asks, are there local No troops in the countryside? So that question. And then we had from Richard Williams, are there any seasonal performances that you would recommend attending in Japan?
Yes, Takigi no outdoor bonfire performance is nice during the summer, spring, autumn. I recommend that. And for the New Year's, they have interesting plays. And if you follow the program, I don't know, No Theater newspaper, for instance, um, you can see, and or web too, on the internet, No Play, probably even in English too. And local No group, it's yes and no. I think she or he is referring to like Kurokawa no. It's the folkloric, more religious orientated performance, which is quite different from Shogun. endorsed, sponsored no theater, what I do right now. But that's a different one. Those who decided to go away from the center, from the capital, and they decided to perform separately, maybe once a year only, as a religious rite. So that's, if you call that a local group, but there's no such thing as a local group.
I see.
Whenever the festivity comes, they form the group. And some of them could be the barber or hairstylist or probably the shopkeeper or something. Doesn't matter. So if she's referring to that's that.
Interesting. Very good. Very good. So yeah, and I will say that for those that are with us currently, Patricia was nice enough to link the National No Theater in Tokyo into the chat as well as their performance schedules. So those are there in the chat. If anyone wants to look into checking out some No, please click those links and check that out as well. I will say we are sadly out of time. We have hit our 1 hour. We had a few questions we weren't able to get to. I will send our speaker the chat, and so he can see all those questions, and at least it's something he can think about. And we do appreciate his time. Thank you, sir. We really, it was absolutely lovely.
Thank
It
you
was
so much.
wonderful.
It was
Yes.
really wonderful. I'm very honored to be. And Amani-san, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for. Sorry, can I see your first name?
Jeff.
Jeff-san, thank you so much for being facilitator. I usually sometimes mess up my talk. I
I can't
really
imagine.
mess up, and I all of a sudden I can't even speak. I'm become muted. Maybe I'm nervous.
I think you have a very easy to follow, and I really enjoyed hearing you talk. You
Yeah.
bring a lot of emotion into your
But
talk.
like
It's
people
very
say,
easy.
I'm very shy. I'm too shy to show my shyness.
I like that.
Okay, Jeff-san, thank
I
you, Amani-san, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank
thank
you, everybody. Everybody, have a wonderful time there.
thank you, Umewaka Sensei. Thank you again, Sensei, for giving us your time today. We really learned a lot, and I'm
はい、どう
very
もありが
glad
と
that
う
we
ござい
could.
ました。
Yes, really
ありがとう
very
ござい
very
まし
great
た。
thing.
ありがとうございました。
All right. Have a great night, everyone. Stay
Bad Tech's IT support and mobile internet service helps make events like this one possible. Thank you.